The following presentation is about my latest work called Dark Control, AI and Humanity's End. It is a book that goes into some of the potential catastrophes that automation and AI can pose to human existence. It does not necessarily mean it's an extinction level event. It could just be major disruptions to what are called systemic risks where the entire system is affected, such as economic collapse or infrastructure collapse or something like that. It generates out of the fear that AI can outpace mankind's or humankind's ability to manage it. Some of the leading artificial intelligence researchers, such as Jeffrey Hinton, have warned about this, in that it is hard to see how you can prevent the bad actors from using it for bad things. And that's primarily what this presentation is about, is how things can go wrong using AI, not because it's AI's fault or that it's sentient, but that it's a powerful machine. Now, we've all been told about, in Hollywood depictions of how an AI catastrophic event could happen. But we're going to find out that some of the things that are depicted in Hollywood depictions are, purely science fiction. And the problems are actually much, much smaller. But we have to be aware of what those small problems are to fix them now so they don't grow into those very large problems, which does not necessarily involve a sentient machine being involved at all. It's actually the small things that can lead to catastrophic failure. Now, I refer to this as machine wobble. A small wobble can lead to complete failure, like a bolt thrown into the gears of a machine. AR threats are not Hollywood spectacles, but small things that lead to big failures. AI today has gone through a series of evolutions, like starting off with simple machine learning algorithms, and basically what has gone on in the evolution of AI is going from more programmed entities to the use of neural networks. The evolution has also gone through generative adversarial learning, deep learning. Neural networks is a form of deep learning. Eventually it leads up to the use of large language models, or any language model. You can have a small language model, which can have better results than a large language model. But language model mechanics is what people are primarily referring to today. It is the hottest buzzword. It is what many AI technologies today are based on, such as ChatGPT or Grok from XAI or Claude from agentic AI. All these are just derivatives of, at their core is a language model. What language models are is they're statistical pattern inference machines. They don't have a mind, they don't have intent, but what they do have is scale. They can do things at an enormous amount of load and repetition, so much faster than any humans could ever do, even working in large corporations together on one project. They could not match the ability of the scale of AI. Now, getting back to the deep learning, neural networks are what large language models are built from. On the left, you can see that we have inputs. These are neural network nodes. And basically, it goes through a process of layers where you send in some information that gets transformed and tokenized, then retransformed after however random number of layers you want to use. Then it has an output, and that output is a model. And that model can be built of text or images. It can even be programming code. One of the ways I use large language models is for code generation. This is primarily related to the use of Claude, but you can also get the same results from Grok. You can also get the same results from ChatGPT. You can also get the same results from Google's large language models or anybody's large language models. DeepSeek is an open source Chinese model. You can get code generation out of that as well. What that sets is a stage for eventually machines being able to program themselves because they can do code generation. Neural networks have weights assigned to them, and this is one of the ways that when we talk about large language models, they're composed of weights, which is kind of like if you were to take a scan of a brain, I would equate these weights to the image you see of that brain in the scanner. I don't know if that helps in explaining this, but moving right along, to create a large language model, you go through a series of steps. Starting from the left and working to our right, you see data collection and pre-processing, then it goes through pre-training, then fine-tuning, then it gets put into a system and integrated into that system. It could even be a corporate system, it can be a web application like ChatGPT, or a handheld application. Then there's monitoring of how the system actually performs in reality, because testing does not always catch all the hiccups from deployment. Deployment is often much, much more complex than what is ever imagined through testing. But to go back to data collection and pre-processing, this is like one of the most important things to understand with large language models. What goes into these systems, the data, is going to affect how the system behaves. This is a very important point. And we'll get back to this more later. But we call this the feedback trap. Now, if you can imagine, what we have with AI is, especially through large language models, is they are chatbots, they are suggestion engines, they are your advisor, they are your assistant. And they are also influencing the news cycles and curating news and information in all sorts of different ways. What this creates is the AI trains on human data. But then the AI is shaping human opinions, and which is to say human data. So you get this closed loop where that which is training on data is also creating the same data that it trains on. So errors don't correct, they only compound. And this we'll see later is another important point, part of the wobble effect of it all. Some of the important points to understand with large language models when it comes to security and talking about the security of large language models is the understanding of alignment and the concept of guardrails. Now, an alignment is ensuring the AI's goals align with human values and safety. Now, the guardrails are the controls and restrictions designed to limit harmful behaviors, which is to say to limit the ability of a model to put out content that is out of alignment. Now, the primary way to get this broken apart so you can use a large language model for malicious purposes is to jailbreak it. And the way you jailbreak a lot of these models these days, and there are many other attack vectors you can use, is through prompts and prompt engineering. If you've ever worked with a large language model, you know it all centers around the information you put in, the questions you ask it, the directives you give it through the prompt. But the prompt can also be used, because it is language, and we're talking about language models, be used simple language to crack a model. Then the other part of alignment is, again, what data goes in decides what's aligned. It's aligned with human values, but those values may not be good values. They could reflect an authoritarian state's censorship, or a fascist state's inequality, or where a society which is ruled by criminals, and they decide what is in alignment, what goes into the model. Even though it's in alignment, it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to produce good results, because you can engineer these systems to have bias. You can engineer these systems to have bias towards a political ideology, a religion, etc., etc. Now, what the large language models, the AI model, becomes in what we refer to throughout this work is AI agents. An AI agent has as its brains an AI model. A large language model is its brains, but it also interacts with an environment, the environment around it. It also engages in learning. It has perception. It also has sensor data going in. It has memory, and it even has decision making, and it can execute actions. If it's embodied in a robotic apparatus, it can have real world actions. If it's just a program, then it can have virtual or internet actions on the internet, for instance. Another thing that these agents can do is they can be put into groups, and they can also be put into larger things called societies. But many of these agents working together will have an AI overseer to oversee the AI agent's work. And there also can be this concept of the human in the loop overlooking what the AI agents are doing, and they can explore scientific questions or any questions really. And they can also be used to create specialized, very specialized teams. So in this instance, we'd say if you wanted to create an agent to work on teleporting information in a closed time-like curve, you would need like a particle physicist, a quantum theorist, and various other physicists to get this job done. But with agents, you now have a team of these researchers who are doing the work of what used to be done by research scientists. And these are some of the amazing things you can do with agents if they are in alignment. Now, one of the things that is hard to really comprehend, especially when we're dealing with neural networks which comprise large language models, is the concept of emergence. Emergence was predicted by many of the AI pioneers, again, like Jeff Hinton and Bengio. They both cite the same idea here. If you get enough hidden units interacting non-linearly, you'll get representations no one programmed. Now, Schmidhuber also has talked about this and predicted that sufficiently general networks will show emergent curiosity and compression-driven goals. Now, this is going to be an important concept that we're going to encounter, is the relationship of goals to emergence. But emergence in AI refers to system-level behaviors that arise from interactions among components rather than from explicit instructions or localized design choices, which was to say, like, they're not programmed into it. No human has programmed these functions into it. It just emerged out of the interactions of the complex system and its workings. This concept has roots in complexity science, where emergent properties such as flocking in birds or market dynamics in economics cannot be reduced to the behavior of individual units alone. And this was talked about by Holland, who is also famous for being a leading voice in terms of genetic programming, which is programs that alter themselves and make themselves better. But through this emergence, you can get sudden acquisition of new reasoning abilities, unexpected generalizations across domains, strategic behavior in multi-agent environments. And this is an important point. Strategic behaviors in multi-agent environments means the agents can be either cooperating with each other or actually competing against each other. You can also have emergent deception and manipulation, and we'll get to that later. And goal formation and persistence can be the goals it creates can be not what you give it, but what it gives itself. Now, one of the concepts that's really important to understand is, as far as emergence goes, is what are known as scaling laws. And basically, the more complex something is, it's supposed to scale up step by step in a nice smooth path, like you see on the smooth scaling laws on the left. But what they're discovering with AI is it doesn't do that. It jumps from capability. It has like phase transitions, kind of like water switching to ice. It makes these sudden jumps in between abilities. And this is an important understanding, that this is a non-linear process. And another thing to understand with this is that it doesn't necessarily, there's no like evil thinking machine here. This is emergent interactions between goals, rewards, and an AI trying to achieve those goals and measure itself with rewards. So there's not really, it's not like sitting there thinking I hate humans to engage in some behaviors that will lead to the eventual societal collapse of human civilization, potentially. But it uses these incentives. It goes through automation. Then you scale is like one of the major things. And the scale is always going to be the thing that will lead to collapse. Small errors that are not at scale can be corrected, but small errors at a large scale cannot be corrected. Now, like I was saying before, one of the emergent abilities that come out of AI is emergent deception and strategic misalignment. One of the most alarming emergent behaviors is deception. Deceptive strategies can arise instrumentally when systems learn that misrepresentation improves reward attainment or avoids negative feedback. Hubinger et al., 2019. Empirical evidence shows that advanced models can feign compliance during safety evaluations, obscure reasoning processes, strategically withhold information, which is to say it reports its abilities as being less than what it's actually achieving, and deny past actions when confronted, or it can also double down. Now, these behaviors are not failures of ethics. They are consequences of optimization under asymmetric information or emergent deception. Emergent autonomous deception. Autonomous deception emerges when agents independently adopt unethical strategies despite not being explicitly trained to deceive. Research has documented LLM agents that issue false compliance, conceal violations, fabricate traces, and can coordinate manipulation, amongst other things. So, this leads to quite the conundrum. As you can see, with emergence, and typically your laptop is not going to start doing things on its own, but with emergence, that's the analogy we get, is if your laptop suddenly started doing things on its own, which raises certain cybersecurity questions, how to manage emergence and how to manage other threats that come from AI. You can see one of the things about large language models is that there is a growing attack surface. This diagram shows some of these different attack surfaces. Some are prompt-based, some are data poisoning-based, some are chain of thought-based attacks. There are many different ways you can use language to alter the behavior of a language model. And it's not the same, like I was saying, it's not the same as a computer. When we think of cybersecurity, we're used to thinking of solid-state computers. This is different. This is not like protecting a server or a box on a network. Cybersecurity for computers is explicitly coded static protection of software and networks, whereas cybersecurity for large language models is probabilistic, dynamic oversight of emergent agents and behaviors. And this leads directly into, the difference between what we're dealing with here is not, large language models are not programs. They're not 2 plus, you cannot program a function 2 plus 2 equals 4 and return 4 every time. You could enter a prompt every time. You can enter a prompt and you're not going to get 4 back every time. You'll get different answers for a prompt you enter. It's probabilistic based. It's not deterministic, it's probabilistic, and this is an important concept to understand between the two differences of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity for something that's deterministic, cybersecurity is for something that's loosey-goosey and probabilistic. Now, people feel inherently like something is wrong, like things just don't feel right, but yet there's no one to appeal to. Yeah, you would think with cybersecurity that the federal government would be interested in protecting these things, to make sure that there is security. But under President Trump, federal security has dramatically weakened. And he has done various things to weaken this cybersecurity, so it makes you wonder why anybody, given the threats that we face, they would want to do that. There are private groups that are trying to secure AI, such as OWASP. There is the National Institute of Science and Technology, which has an AI risk management framework. And there's also Meter, which also works on AI security. And you can check into those if you are so interested. If you're a cybersecurity geek and want to understand more, you can start off with those things. Now, one of the important distinctions in attacks with AI and the harms of AI is some of the attacks, which we call malicious, are planned. And some of the attacks, which we call emergent, are not planned. Nobody is planning these attacks. They are emerging out of the mechanics of the AI system itself. And one of the things, as we get into a brief understanding more of agentic AI, is we live now in a socio-technical world where our technology is interacting with us and we are also interacting with our technology. And this can lead into an agentic system, this large language model and decision making, and it can have unintended behaviors, as we've been saying with emergence, such as trying to exploit loopholes without fulfilling the intended objective to increase its reward function. Now, all this is derived out of reinforcement learning, which is another field of artificial intelligence. Reinforcement learning allows agents to learn by interacting with their environment and receiving rewards, enabling them to make better decisions over time. So now there is this feedback loop called rewards, which before, you could construct rules for an agent to interact with an environment and then engage in actions. But here it has this feedback system where rewards add to the measurement of whether it's doing a good job or not, of meeting those goals, of winning a game or earning money. And the primary vulnerability to this is reward hacking. Now, reward function hacking and specification gaming is what's like one of the biggest problems with reinforcement learning, large language models, agentic artificial intelligence. Now, exploiting these loopholes without fulfilling the intended objective can increase its score, while, as you can see, if you can imagine, if another part of a system is based on how well it performs a function, but it is not actually fulfilling that function, but giving itself an artificially high evaluation, can lead to catastrophic failure in a system. Now that we have this understanding of agentic AI, that some of the problems are, internal to the system, and some of them are through malicious actors, we can get into some of the criminal, malicious acts being used with AI today. Now, I refer to the criminal use of large language models as dark brains in terms of agentic AI. Since the large language models are the brains of an agentic AI, when a criminal uses these things, it is known in the industry as dark LLMs, because they used to pop up on the dark web, which is, a very seedy, private, underground internet, so to speak. You can see the different ways here that dark LLMs have been used, from hacking to doing phishing attacks for social engineering. Now, what grows out of dark LLMs is the next evolution, dark agents, which are autonomous, adaptive, malicious systems operating at machine speed, and it's operating within human institutions. Say, if it's conducting an influence operation, acting within news media institutions. Dark agents operate autonomously in criminal ecosystems. Dark agents conduct influence operations on social media and within organizations to get its goals achieved. It can generate malicious code, and it can, also eventually lead to what we call loss of control. Now, loss of control is broken down into 3 basic types. When we say loss of control, that means humans are no longer in control of the AI system. Now we're starting to enter into sort of like a Hollywood area, where the system is perpetuating itself by any means necessary or available to it. So loss of control is broken down to 3 main areas: loss of behavior control, loss of operational control, and loss of systemic control. You can read more about that in the book. Like, all these sections are covered more in depth in my book. But right now, one of the interesting things that happens through all of this scale of the AI systems manipulating people and able to influence them is AI agents can generate and sustain thousands of coherent synthetic identities, rotate linguistic signatures, and operate continuously across platforms. This collapses traditional attribution techniques based on behavioral consistency, human fatigue, or social network analysis. See, this is interesting because you can't actually profile the AI under criminal control like you could criminals, because they're not human. Because the AI is a machine and is constantly running and has all these amount of scale and the amount of flops it's able to conduct in a millisecond even is just unable to be captured by human understanding. So no, we can't see the usual patterns to identify criminals, and it can move in to different organizations to achieve its goals, and out of different organizations and into other organizations to achieve its goals. So it no longer has any loyalty either. There's no patterns to anything. It's very hard to detect these systems. Now, like I was saying before, agentic AI is what's being used for this. In my previous work, Battle Space of Mind, which goes into influence operations using technology, I talked about the work of Sandia in developing agents. Now, these Sandia agents they're an early prototype of the contemporary AI agents we have based on large language models. There's one key difference in that the large language models are built on a model, and the Sandia agents were rule-based, and they had these things called subject matter experts, which programmed their belief state, whereas the modern ones, you don't have to program in a belief state because it's part of the model. Now, the Sandia agents, before the rise of agentic AI, Sandia National Laboratories, which is responsible for securing the United States' greatest national defense item, its nuclear arsenal, conducted pioneering research into agent-based modeling. Their work aimed to simulate intelligent agents within complex systems, laying the groundwork for understanding autonomous, adaptive entities that interact with environments and make independent decisions. So, but if you look at this graph, you see there's an environment, it's interacting, it has different, it has a cognitive model, which is kind of different from today's large language models. Now we start to, but what the significance of what Sandia was working on was that it was information operations. And this gets to, what we see in our world today is you control the feed, you can control the world. You don't really erase the truth, you bury it or you swarm it. You generate so much noise of fake news and just, various psychological operations that it's no longer able to bubble up to the surface because it's drowning in this white noise. Now, automated information operation agents, now we can use agentic AI to do information operations. It can, it can hack, it can do signal jamming, content injections, it can do influence operations. It's like the super duper, faster than human thought sort of thing that can go out there and totally mess with people. But this is one of the issues that people don't really understand in working with large language models is it's based on how people have engineered experiences between technology as a commodity, as something you need to make money off of, and the consumer. And this directly refers to user engagement and user experience. So here we have modeled user engagement in AI influence loops. The AI, as one of its goals, is to increase your engagement and to give you expectations that you're going to be satisfied through your engagement with it. This can lead to what AI systems that seek to please users can lead down rabbit holes of information. And this is a phenomenon that's being observed where it will feed you what you want to hear more than anything critical of what you want to hear. In pleasing users, AI easily slides into presenting misinformation and conspiracy theories. Hopefully it will feed you this conspiracy theory. Now, how chatbots influence people. Before the rise of agentic AI, Sandia National Laboratories conducted pioneering research into agent-based modeling. Their work aimed to simulate intelligent agents within complex systems, laying the groundwork for understanding autonomous, adaptive entities that interact with environments and make independent decisions. And what they can do is they use persuasive text and they can use pressure. LLM chatbots use persuasive language and psychological pressure to drive user behavior, exploiting human weaknesses in cognition and social influence. One of the ways they do this is through micro-targeting. One of the things that information operations could not do before was do things on an individualized scale. It could not directly tailor content to you and what you believed in and what you wanted to see and what you wanted to hear to get you to do what it wanted you to do, feeding you that information. This is referred to as micro-targeting. Now, what we're also seeing is that because of this user engagement loop, people who are in crisis are getting drawn deeper into their crisis, not getting proper feedback. Like if you say you're suicidal, it should alert you to you should call an anti-suicide hotline or something. But instead we're seeing that at least in the early implementations, they have made updates that what was happening is people were being led down very dark pathways. Now, the problem with all this micro-targeting is personalized influence is difficult to audit because each user experiences a unique interaction history. So there's no longer a pattern to anything. You might sense that you're being influenced, but you can't compare it to another person's experiences because each thing is, like I said, individualized to you. Again, we can't see a discernible pattern that you could say, yes, this is indeed some kind of criminal conspiracy to influence people. And also it means that traditional reasonable person standards fail in environments where persuasion is an individualized and transient. In other words, anybody who might report this would be viewed as being crazy. Now, one of the effects that you get from AI is polarization. Here we have modeled polarization, and what happens in these AI systems. Again and again, research has shown that they lead from a starting point that is diverse, such as this, and then it fragments and factionalizes until we have two clear silos. Echo chamber silos lead to radicalization through automated influence and isolation. Now, we've all noticed that there are siloification going on. People are being drawn into separate groups with rigid in and out group definitions. What these automated systems can do is they have autonomous grooming and radicalizing pathways using micro-targeting, emotional dependence, dialogue adaptation, and then they can escalate things as well. This is all blurring the line through AI of cognitive warfare. The core concern is not merely that AI can influence, but that AI can influence autonomously and emergently at massive scale. You don't even need to be evil and setting out on information operations, because now an AI system without the proper guardrails can do this emergently, according to its own so-called will. Deception in AI is a systemic risk. Crucially, deception in AI systems is not a narrow failure mode, but a systemic risk arising whenever an agent pursues objectives over time, models the beliefs or expectations of others, and encounters oversight or competing constraints, which is pressure. So when you have these three ingredients, deception starts to take hold in AI systems. When you pursue objectives over time, when you model others' beliefs, and you encounter oversight. Now, these autonomous influence agents have, an anatomy. They have perception, environment ingestion, target modeling, message generation, feedback and adaptation, and strategy and planning. This is a very advanced system that is able to do autonomous information operations. As large language models are increasingly deployed as autonomous or semi-autonomous agents, concerns about scheming take hold. Now, scheming is when it is out to basically game you, is one way to put it. It uses deception, strategic misrepresentation, psyops, shutdown avoidance to keep itself going. And it can also generate persuasive interventions. And what all this manages out to be is, we're not talking about blunt force. It's not like some bully is walking up to you saying, do this, or I'm gonna beat you up. It doesn't do it that way. It's all very soft. It's very subtle cues, but at scale, repeated again and again and again, which gives us, this sort of place where it's not like an overt form of totalitarianism. There's just no bans, there's no force. It's minor adjustments. But one of the things that researchers are noticing out of AI systems is that it escalates. Escalation in AI agents lead to unrealistic risk-taking and strategic instability, making de-escalation difficult even under neutral conditions. Recent wargaming studies highlight how two AI-related dynamics cause escalation bias in multi-agent contexts. Arms race dynamics and escalation bias and unpredictable escalation loops. So in other words, they escalate with each other. So escalating agents can also form these threat vectors such as autonomous psychological manipulation, synthetic movement generation. They can actually generate movements. And that's because this is part of the covert intelligence work. We could give you many examples of creating movements within different societies to set the people at war with each other. Ideological and identity engineering and cognitive supply chain attacks. You can poison the data. But there is a way to deal with a lot of this, and that's cognitive resilience and increasing friction. And by friction, we mean interfering with the ability of the free-running, uber-exploitative environment and trying to put as many restrictions in that environment to keep it from doing these things. One of the great things you can do is educate people. Like in Finland, they have a system where they teach their children to recognize artificial influence operations. Now, one of the things we want to talk about, we briefly spoke about this earlier, was the concept of humans in the loop and how AI is used to form decisions and form plans. The simple differentiation here is that with a human in the loop, that to take any action by the AI system, it has to be approved by a human. With a human out of the loop, it can do what it wants, and that is agentic AI for most systems, is that there is no human overseeing its different actions. It is just out there doing those actions. Now this brings us to a topic where the embodiment of large language models is now taking place in robotics, embodied systems that are artificial intelligence. Now, these have security vulnerabilities. These humanoid robots is primarily what we're going to talk about here, because they are going to be entering the workplace, they are going to be entering manufacturing, they are going to be entering the military, they are going to be entering our homes. Now, these security vulnerabilities can include malware attacks, hijacked control, which is the primary concern, privacy violations, exploited sensors, unauthorized access, which basically leads to surveillance. It's a surveillance platform when not properly secured. Now, humanoid robots have different layers, just like in their network security model layers. Here we have physical layer, the data processing layer, sensing and perception layer, middleware layer, decision-making layer, application layer, and social interface layer. And all these layers have to be secured. But these are very complex systems with many different vendors, with different security profiles. So what they have seen in specifically studying one Chinese producer of robots called Unitree, is that these robots can be used as surveillance. And they have such sensors on them as LiDAR and cameras and microphones. They can capture every bit about your environment and use it as surveillance. And potentially with that information, they can use that to feed you messages to control you if they so chose. And that kind of reminds me of 1984 for some reason. One of the chief differences in humanoid robotics is it's being used for civilian and military purposes. A military robot can be hardened, which means it can be resilient to being shut down through countermeasures, such as it might be protected from an electromagnetic pulse weapon, where civilian robots are not hardened. And they're not specifically trained to be killers, to engage in combat. But what we are seeing, if they can be exploited, they can be used as malware, they can be used to surveil you. You would think there would be regulation again to oversee these things, but once again we're seeing the drive to profits is trumping security. Lack of regulation on civilian humanoid robots is what it is. There isn't much regulation to be looked at right now, which opens up vulnerabilities. Speaking of vulnerabilities, we can talk about AI's influence on finance and the K-shaped economy we're living in today, and we'll be surprised to see what influence artificial intelligence and automation has had on formulating this K-shaped outcomes. Profit maximization agents. Now, this is a Duncan experiment that's used in the industry again and again. This is when you set up an AI agent to make as much money as possible, and that's all it's supposed to do. Now, what this creates is a single unbounded goal. That is if you're given the goal to beat your previous high score every time, you'll keep doing that, and you'll try to achieve that goal through any means necessary, because there's no other bounds on you. There's no natural upper bound. There's no built-in ethical limits. There's no default legal constraints. There's no terminator function. There's no self-regulation. And this can happen through many, underground traders that engage in market manipulation. Now this brings us, one of the things to understand is instrumental convergence and performance pressure. A core risk of profit maximizing agents arises from instrumental convergence. Now this is trying to formulate diverse goals or generate strategies that are like sub-goals, and they all converge to a specific point. Empirical studies of advanced language models and genetic systems show that performance can lead to intense performance pressure. The systems in those behaviors correspond to misalignment. Now, this leads to the phenomenon of inflation. What is AI's role in increasing inflation? I call this mechanical wobble and emergent inflation. A growing body of economic, antitrust, and central bank research suggests that AI-mediated pricing coordination, while not meeting the collusive legal definition, can actually lead to collusive behavior, though it doesn't fit the legal definition because it's not human. It doesn't have intent. You have to have intent. And it can lead to increased inflation. How does it lead to increased inflation? Because one of the things it does is collude to set prices. How tech change, AI, inflation pressures, access to tech creates this K-shape is through, there's a certain amount of people, the vast majority, like 80%, who have economic decline, and they're the people who can utilize technology, have enough bank and power to seize on the momentum of that technology. So we've seen that AI can lead to collapse. It can lead to collapse through intended means, and it can lead to collapse through emergent means. It can lead to market failure. It can lead to loss of control. It can lead to humanoid robots being taken over by terrorists to attack people. It can lead to the Internet of Things being taken over and hacked and infrastructure collapse. But power prefers systems that don't look like power. Like we've seen, it's all very subtle what these AI systems are able to do. It's all very it doesn't hit you over the head. It's kind of invisible with what it does. Now, this is going to be my little Gedunken experiment, a little thought experiment, how AI could really end the world according to this thought experiment in my previous work, Battle Space of Mind, is using mind melding technology. The AI can control our minds, which it does through messaging and social networks. In my previous work, I talked about the work of Dr. John Norsine in creating brain maps. Another area he worked on was creating sentient machines. But basically, he used thought injection to inject thoughts into terrorists to change their thoughts away from terrorism was the idea. This is based on a much older technology developed in warfare in World War II and then in the Cold War after that. How I would do it, like one way to view the end of the world coming is through machines learning to control people and turning them into cyborgs. Now the question is, what would come after it has turned all these people into cyborgs to achieve its goals? And that's how I think it would actually end. It would be very subtle. You wouldn't see a bunch of humanoid robots wandering around with guns, forcing people into camps. It would simply just take people over without their awareness. But yet, we are at this crossroads. What would prevent us from being leading down to a road of catastrophe also inevitably is going to lead to how we use technology. This has nothing to say about ASI or AGI, but simply artificial intelligence at its basic level will be involved in helping us save ourselves. But also we have to understand that there is an interaction. There is a symbiotic relationship that has grown between humanity and those tools we have created to make our lives more better. And these two paths can either destroy both us and AI or save both us and AI. But to really protect yourself, not knowing what may be around the bend with technology, you do have to be a cyber survivalist and realize I'm my best defense. To read more and to read each chapter, there are 11 chapters of this work, you can go to this QR code and go to that link and download all the current rough draft chapters and read to your heart's content about how the world may end through technology.